that you cannot go against the whip or the what the party is saying. It restricts their, intellectual exercise also. So I think one reform at the internal level is that the 10th schedule needs to be somehow, I will not say remove it in entirety, because one politician in a very humorous sense told me that the 10th schedule is like the four wheels of a car. And it is the steering. So if the steering is not in control, all the four wheels are going to run in four different directions. And that is where the problem will arise. So the 10th schedule acts as the steering, and I'm sure 10th schedule is most relevant to the politics of Maharashtra in the last 7, 8, 9 months, right? So essentially, I think that is one reform I would want in terms of the Indian Parliament. And if I talk about international perspective, one thing where I believe that India is lacking, though India has a specific mandate under Article 51 and Article 253. Article 51 clearly states that the state, under the directive principles of state policy, it is mandated to foster respect for international law and settle international disputes via arbitration. This is mandated by the Constitution to the government of India, right? And the second thing that I talk about is Article 253, which is a brief on the fact that the Parliament can legislate on any international treaty that it has signed. We have seen multiple reformatory laws that was a part of an international covenant, but the government of India at the later part, after 15, 20 years, converted that into a law. One of the most important aspect which I think Sir's department was the creation of the Central Vigilance Commission. That came through the United Nations Conventions on Crimes, which India had signed and ratified, and subsequently it had reproduced that in the form of a law. The second, as recent as the rights of persons with disabilities. That was also a convention on, where we talk about the United Nations Conventions on the rights of persons with disability. Thirdly, if we talk about the UN clause, the United Nations Conventions on the Law of Seas.
Sorry to interrupt you. So, since we need to wrap up, maybe you can summarize it in one statement, and we'll take that down for the minutes of this proceedings, and then we'll further analyze that in our discussions.
Just to conclude by my last sentence, the second reform in terms of international perspective is that India needs to create a time frame for when it signs a treaty or ratifies a treaty. There should be a time frame as to when it is going to implement that in its domestic legislations. Because a treaty that is signed 25 years back and implemented now doesn't hold any relevance. So essentially, my second recommendations would be that we need to have a time frame in terms of adhering to our international obligations at the UN level or other international organization level. And third and last, I'll just take 30 seconds. Third and last, that India needs, as we hold the presidency for G20, we need to now be rule makers and not rule takers. We have had organizations which have imposed rules, right? And we have just followed those. But now that we have presidency of G20, we need to completely reform the multilateral structure at the international level. The democracy has to be not only representational at domestic level, there has to be in representational international order also, in terms of seats at the Security Council, WTO, WHO, and all international organizations need to treat everybody equally. So these would be my set of recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can we just have us... okay, so I think we'll have to close the session at this time. So thank you to all the panelists for your valuable suggestions and inputs. And we will be taking this forward in our further discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. As much as we would like to continue with this interesting conversation, and sorry, but we have to put it to a close. Thank you to our panelists for such a thought-provoking discussion. It was rightfully highlighted during the discussion that equitable representation in the judiciary, legislature, as well as the executive is a prerequisite of not just fixing the laws, but also fixing the culture and the societies that produce those laws. We would now like to present a token of our appreciation to our panelists and moderator who's present here. For that, I would like to call upon Dr. Vidya Yeravdekar, Pro-Chancellor, SIU, to the stage and present the panelists and moderator with a token of our appreciation. First, we present it to our moderator, Ms. Lasya Vyakaranam. Next, we present it to Mr. Albert Lanong. Next, we would like to present it to Mr. Praveer Srivastava. Can we please have a huge round of applause for our panelists? And last but not the least, we present it to Mr. Vishwas Nangre Patil. I now request everyone on the stage to step forward for a group photograph.
Good evening, one and all present here. We are ready to begin with the final session for the first theme of the Y20 consultation, the topic of Vikas or developmental politics. To explore and shed light on this crucial topic with multiple intricacies and dimensions to ponder upon, we would like to invite a panel of experts on the field to commence with the panel discussion. Mr. Praveen Nikam, founder, Samatha Center and Chevening Scholar at London School of Economics. Dr. Srimati Renu Raj, IAS, District Collector, Ernakulam. Ms. Kairavi Khimji, Director, Khimji Ramdas LLC, Sultanate of Oman. Can we please have a round of applause for our panelists? And we are delighted to request Mr. Akash Shah, Founder and Executive Director of Action for Pune Development, to come on the stage as the moderator for the session. Can we have a round of applause for our panelists and moderators, please? Thank you, panelists and moderator, for joining us on stage. The floor is all yours.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank SIU, the G20 Consultation Committee, for having us here, for organizing this super, consultation session where we have young people from across geographies. And of course, a personal thing that being an alumni of Symbiosis, have had education association for 13 years of my life with Symbiosis. It's definitely a pleasure and it's like coming back home. When we were given this topic of development politics, and I went through all other topics that we had, this is like literally a combination of everything that we've been talking here. And development politics is something that it's about whatever is happening with us all through our lives, and something that directly affects us. For example, when it comes to any action that happens in any part of the world, somewhere or the other, we as humans are impacted. When I read this topic, I really thought of taking opinions from different people, different platforms. I had a communication with a lot of people, including ChatGPT and including Google, including people from different sectors, and everybody had a different answer. And that is when I actually realized, I had my own set of definition for development politics. It's about, people, policies, and governance. And the center to everything is people. This discussion is something what, all of us, when we discussed before coming here, we thought this session should be in such a way that it's not just we who will be speaking and, delivering our brains, but it has to be interactive because it's all about us. There cannot be a place better than India to host G20 in current times because we have the highest youth population in the world. And of course, since morning we've been understanding the G20 statistics. Highest world trade, like 85% of world trade, 70% of global GDP and all those things. And to narrow it down, Symbiosis is one of those places where this is the right place to have this communication because we are in a community where it's a purely youth-centric community and 85 countries, students from 85 countries are actually present here. So, we would like to start this conversation by introducing the speakers. We have Kairavi Khimji from Oman, who has a background from private sector as well as public sector. We have Dr. Renu Raj, who is from an administrative background, who is also an IS officer. We have Praveen Nikam, who is, a civil society background plus a law and of course a great youth leader. And feel free to clap. And I know Akasha. I come from a civil society youth development background, also an entrepreneur who's working in with a ESG centric point of view. So I don't want to take this very far. Let's have our panel speakers to express their views, and of course we want to narrow it down in a very simple policy statement where we can give genuine recommendations. And as I said, it's not just about us. We really need all our participants to engage and have an honest opinion and communication so that we give something that is very strong and concrete recommendation. Because such kind of platforms don't come every day. And fortunately, being in India, being at Symbiosis, we've got this opportunity and let's make the best of it. So we can start. We can start with Kairavi. Yes.
Can you all hear me? Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste, everyone. My name is Kairavi Khimji, as Akash said. I'm from Oman. I just want to see a show of hands. How many of you know what Oman is and where Oman is? If you can raise your hand. Okay, there's quite a few of you, I think, because we've got significant amount of representation here in Symbiosis. Now, I just want to explain a little bit, and it's very much an extension of what we heard yesterday from His Excellency from Bhutan. So I'm from Oman, and I'm just going to try and explain to you what it is I represent, yeah? So Oman has approximately a population of 5.4 million people, an area of 309,500 kilometers squared, 18% of which are mountains. Our highest mountain is 2,800 kilometers high. 65% of our population is youth. 54% are female. We are an absolute monarchy, okay? So a lot of numbers, a lot of information. I'm going to try and explain that a little further. The size of Oman is approximately the size of the state of Maharashtra. 65% of our population watch the movie Pathan. Majority of them we're very disappointed that the producers decided to use the Arabic dubbed song of Jume Jo Pathan in the end and not the Hindi one. Okay? Around 96% of Oman is literate. The literacy rate amongst the women of Oman is 98%. Okay? I'm not going to say it literally, but if 98% of women are literate and 96% is the average literacy rate of Omani, you can do the math of how literate the men are. Okay? Need I say more? Also, around the same amount, 90% of Oman have homes, have a shelter. Okay? That's extremely high. We, this time, are not on the menu list. Oman is a guest nation who has been invited by India to sit on the table at the G20. So we will be discussing policies with you all. I have a final fact I would like to share before I move on the introduction. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Our staple diet is also dal and chapati with a lot of chilies and a lot of chutney. So just for you to understand a bit of where Oman is, and for me, getting from my home in Muscat to Mumbai was faster than getting from Mumbai to Pune. So this is a little bit of me.
Yes.
So, good evening, all of you. As Mr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the former President of India, once said, political system is a sum of development politics and political politics. India, as you all know, is the 7th largest country in the world by area, the 2nd most populous country, and the most populous democracy. It is a multilingual, multi-ethnic, and pluralistic country. And because of the kind of democracy it has, generally when we theoretically talk about the so-called Vikas politics, which means the development politics, we always think initially that democracy goes against the concept of developmental politics. This is because we think when it comes to a country, a democratic country like India, where in fact, because of its diversity of its political setup, no electoral majority is cast in stone and no ideological hegemony has any permanence. And democracy is considered as an obstacle to growth when we think in that way, theoretically, because we think that the office seekers ultimately subordinate the long-term developmental goals before their electoral goals and appeasing the vote bank. We all know that this development politics is nothing but sewing development into the fabric of politics in its action as well as discourse. So the question I think we should discuss here is whether a country, a democratic country like India, can actually go for the concept of developmental politics. Yes, we have a lot of challenges when we look ahead into this. The first and foremost being the federal structure of a country. It is not just a single entity deciding upon the policies of the nation. We depend on a federal system where we have the center as well as the states and union territories. In addition, we have a lot of local self-governments, the municipalities, city corporations, and panchayats. And many of them have their own priorities and their own interests. For example, the priorities of development of a state like Kerala is very different from the priorities of development of a state like Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu. In addition, We also have states and areas and local bodies with varying states of development. When it comes to infrastructure, you cannot compare the state of Gujarat with the state of UP or the state of Bihar.